The reality we live in can be a very strange place. Most of the time, fact being stranger than fiction. How will we ever start to understand this reality we live in unless we question everything? Join me and a guest as we unravel the mysteries of this reality, one topic at a time. This is Inquiries of Our Reality with Shayn Jones.
What is up, Inquirers, and welcome to the expansive, deep, open-minded conversation. I'm the one they call Shayn, and today for you guys, I have a great episode for you, diving into one man's personal experiences with Sasquatch and investigating Sasquatch. You guys know it's one of my favorite conversations to have, to see how people got into the phenomenon, what experiences have kept them in the phenomenon, and to know where exactly the research is going in the phenomenon. But before we get into this great episode, of course, nothing too crazy as far as news and updates go. Just one quick thing. April 3rd will be the next time that we'll be doing another live episode of Bizarre Inquiries. Had a lot of fun on the last one, and we appreciate all of you guys that end up stopping by. And hopefully we'll have more of you guys that'll end up popping by for the next one, throwing in your suggestions, ideas, all that type of stuff over in the chats. And if anybody has anything that they would like us to discuss for that April 3rd show, you guys can send it to us through email, social media, or whatever way you guys want to choose to get up with us. And you guys can either send in articles, clips, questions, whatever you guys happen to want us to discuss. And I forgot to also mention that will be, of course, on the Open Minds Media YouTube at 7:15 p.m. But of course, more information will be given as we get a lot closer to that date. And before we get into the show, if anyone would like to be a guest on the show, or if anybody has had an encounter or experience that they would like to share on the show, or possibly even have me investigate, you guys can email me at inquiriesofourrealitypodcast@outlook.com. Or you guys can either call or text the hotline, and that number is 313-364-1551. And every single thing that I mention and will mention throughout the entire show will be available on the link tree, which is available down in that show description. And with that, let's get into the show. Please welcome to the show, Daniel Benoit, wildlife and Bigfoot researcher. Welcome to the show, man.
Hey, man. Thank you very much. I am glad to be here. Thank you for bringing me on.
Absolute pleasure, man. I've seen you around the community, actually. I think I've had you on Instagram for a while, and you did like a post that you were going to be speaking at a convention or something. I was like, how have I not had this guy on the show before? So I ended up shooting you a message and ended up setting everything up. And so far, from the little bit of conversation we had beforehand, man, I can tell this is going to be a fun one.
I believe so. Yeah, I love to talk, bro. I ramble most of the time, but I like to talk. So
hey, that's some of the fun of being on a podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I tell people, because I speak at various events along the East Coast, and every time I start my presentation, I have to let everybody know, there's a few things I tell them, but like, try to stay with me. I'm very random. Even though I got a presentation, on the screen, I might stop talking about one thing and present something else and then come back to something, because there's usually a correlation or something that you can contribute or relate or compare to the topic that I'm originally discussing. So, so I always try to people, try to stay with me. I try to stay on topic the best I can, but it's just a habit I've developed over years to get random on things, because my mind's thinking about this while I'm talking about this, so yeah, that's how I am.
Honestly, same for me. And I think I was talking about this on a recent show with somebody that was like, when you're presenting something, you're used to thinking on like your level of how you're presenting the thing. But, sometimes you forget that other people don't necessarily have all the backgrounds if you start using like general nicknames or terms or something like that for Sasquatch things. So I end up doing that all the time on the show, that I'll like double back onto what I'm talking about to re-explain it to get to the point that I was trying to make. Cause I'll start getting to a point and then I'll realize that like, oh, if I don't explain this part, then this point isn't going to make any sense. So I double back. So, man, two birds, one stone. We both think the same way, man.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Because, when you're talking to the crowd, I mean, you have a combination of young and old, and especially some of the basic terminology. I mean, I try not to get all fancy in my talk. I know a few words, but I don't know when I talk and I want to present the way I know how. I have to stop and think, okay, they may not know this terminology or they may not know what I'm talking about. So I'll have to get into like the basic elementary explanations and stuff, without trying to insult people's intelligence, So, but, I'm not a scientist, but I do a lot of scientific research and studies, for my research, but that's about it. So.
Well, I guess that kind of brings us back around a little bit. Before we get into like all of the meat and potatoes of the conversation today and all the Sasquatchery and everything, we of course have to kind of lay the groundwork a little bit, let everybody know where you're coming from, how you got into everything you do, and let them know a little bit about East Coast Bigfoot Researchers Organization.
Yeah. So, I'll be 45 in March, and me, I grew up playing in the outdoors, either playing in the woods, with friends, building forts, doing silly stuff, or tagging along with dad out in the woods hunting, So at a young age, I became quite, acquainted and familiar with a lot of wildlife, and a lot of it I didn't always get to witness with my father. I would probably be by myself somewhere in the woods, seeing animals and, just watching them play and this and that. So, I've always been intrigued by the wildlife. For example, as much as we see deer, it's almost exciting to see a deer. We have them in the yard all the time, tons of them. But, when you're out there deep in the woods and you're seeing them, it's still exciting, and so wildlife has always intrigued me. I've always paid attention to them. And so that's been a big part of my life, is growing up with the wildlife and learning to understand them and get familiar with their vocalizations, their tracks, and then later on became more familiar with their diets and what they like to eat, how they behave, and so many other things in between. And then later on, first of all, let me back up just a little bit. The subject of Bigfoot. It's been heard of. It was, it's just, at a young age, you never really thought of it, gave it any thought whatsoever. I mean, you would hear about it, you would see something on TV once in a while. Bigfoot shows wasn't a thing when I was a kid. A rare moment you might capture something. And then, of course, later on, Harry and the Hendersons came out later in the 80s. So, that was something that kind of, knowing it was only a movie, just to see how it was played out, kind of got the mind thinking a little bit. But, for the record, Harry and the Hendersons ain't got me involved in Bigfoot. But I just wanted to throw that out there. Everybody's familiar with it. It was a fun movie. Matter of fact, I just watched it again last night.
Funny you mentioned that. I just watched that again like a day or two ago with my son for the first time because he watched it all the way through. But that's one of those classics that if you're into Sasquatch stuff, even if it doesn't necessarily follow most of what people believe about Sasquatch, it's still a good movie to have on the shelf. You got to have it in your Sasquatch collection.
Absolutely. Oh, for sure. For sure. Especially when, it gives a general image to the child. If, okay, they have a general idea what Bigfoot could look like, or might look like. Which is, it's a fun portrayal of Bigfoot, regardless if that's actually what it looks like or not. I mean, but yeah, the subject of Bigfoot actually started to spark, stand out over 15 years ago for me. One of the films, and maybe not everybody's familiar with this, I just assume they are, but Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin, the footage that they captured from 1967, that video footage has been dissected left and right. It's been attacked by science and so many others. Bill Munn's graphic film analysis, he studied and dissected the original footage, and to see everything that's ever been done with that. I mean, that footage alone really like opened up a door. It kind of like, whoa, what's this? This is not a TV show. This is somebody's recording, And then again, science got involved, and what was so intriguing that they cannot debunk it to be a hoax. I mean, yeah, there's speculation, there's rumors of this one and that one wearing a costume, but of course the costume never showed up, but
I always bring up the point too that back in that era too, Hollywood didn't have costumes that great. So anybody that tries to use the thing and say that there was a costume that somebody was wearing, two guys with a generic camera in the middle of the woods with horses aren't going to have better costumes than Hollywood has at the time. Like, I'm sorry, but like that's always been one that just got thrown right out the window if you look at other productions being made at the time.
Well, absolutely. The best that Hollywood had during that time came out a year later, March of 1968. The first movie of the Planet of the Apes. That's what they came out with. So, I mean, it's look at, they had monkey faces, So, and Disney is another one. Disney is pretty creative on a lot of things. Disney even said we don't have nothing like that. Especially nothing that looked anywhere that good. I mean, of course, the times have changed. I mean, Disney, the costumes got better and more cartoon-like. I mean, they turned cartoon-like for what was during that time, basically. I mean, but yeah, you're right. Hollywood, everybody in Hollywood, said, nope, that ain't us. Disney said that ain't us. So
maybe Jim Henson, but I don't know when he started up.
Well, that's a good point. He's been around for many years as well. I'm sure he was a young guy, or a much younger guy back then with the Muppets. But as far as I'm concerned, I don't know. That didn't, to me personally, it didn't look nothing Muppet-like or anything along those lines. But they couldn't mimic the gait. I mean, they've compared several people to try to walk like that. They showed the different angles and the positioning of the feet as it stepped and walked. I mean, so even to the skeptic, if there's any skeptics out there listening, I mean, I would highly recommend you checking out the footage. Just take a look at it. If you've never seen it, they actually have 4K video footage of it. Somebody put together a 4K video footage, and I thought they did real good with the 4K on YouTube. It clears it up a little bit. You still have that grain in there because it's the age of the video. Of course, it was only taken with a 16 millimeter camera. So if anyone's familiar with a 16 millimeter camera, if you're old enough that you never owned one or seen what they produce, then there you go. You got the Roger Patterson, Bob Gimlin footage, from 1967. But that there was a big part of what got me involved with this. It put me more. I shouldn't say it put me more into outdoors. Well, maybe so. Maybe I could say that. I mean, it definitely had me on a different level. What turned into a major, serious sign of curiosity sparked I guess, the spark of curiosity basically turned into a strong passion. I wanted to know more. I wanted to find things for myself because I was intrigued. I was actually already kind of starting to believe, even though, I never seen nothing for myself at that point. But going out in nature and really paying attention to things that we normally would ignore. Your average hunter, I mean, I've heard this from other hunters. When I present myself or talk to people in public, well, I'm in those woods all the time. I never see no tracks. I never see no Bigfoot or this or that. And they're not, well, are you actually looking for them? No, never started looking for them. I said, of course. So, I mean, how are you going to not see them if you're not looking for them? You got to look for them. Yeah, some things might be obvious on some rare occasions. You know, if you're walking along a straightaway, a clearing in the woods, especially along a creek bed. Now, that's one of my favorite places to look for tracks. If there's exposed soil around these creek beds, and the ground's usually soft, so you see a lot of wildlife, your deer, bear, and then you might see a large humanoid track along those ways. I mean, I see large impressions all throughout the forest, but, they're inconclusive. Some look promising, but
Hold on tight, everyone. Inquiries of Our Reality will be right back after this brief commercial break. But if you don't mind taking a second to follow Inquiries of Our Reality on Instagram and Facebook, and Open Minds Media on YouTube and TikTok, I'd greatly appreciate it. And feel free to spark up a conversation. I love getting to know you guys. And now back to the show.
So yeah, but it takes your senses, and it's like turning up the volume. Your senses become so heightened. And puts you more on full alert because you're actually zoning in. You learn to really use your senses, your ears. You learn to use your eyes the best you can. I like to believe I have pretty good eyesight. Even though I'm wearing contacts right now, but with the contacts, I do have good eyesight. Them in my glass, I do wear glasses myself, so.
Sometimes you don't even necessarily need good eyesight. You just need to be able to catch movement. Like, even if you can't see that great, if you're blind and it's super blurry, if you can catch some kind of movement, at least you know something's there. That's half the battle.
Oh, absolutely. My peripheral vision. I mean, I'm actually pretty sharp. I surprise myself sometimes. How, like, especially when I'm at work or doing whatever I'm dealing with. You're maneuvering, and all of a sudden you have to capture your hands actually. You're moving up, I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain. It's just you get in this motion, and then there's been several times out in the woods walking along, like, what the heck was that? I'm looking over here, but my peripheral vision and my senses are like, oh, shooting over there, like, holy crap. I've spotted some pretty cool stuff that way. But yeah, it's amazing how the human body works. When you kind of let yourself go, you kind of. I don't know the proper way to put this, but I don't want to say you train your senses, but I guess some people have to train their senses to really pick up and pay attention to things. But sometimes when you let your mind relax and you do stay focused at the same time, you start noticing things. You start hearing things that you normally would ignore, like, because I've heard so many different odd, strange vocals out there, and I can tell you, especially in my main area here in Virginia, I mean, I could tell you all the sounds. If they belong to a known species of animal, I'm going to tell you what they are. There's been a few times I've heard some howls and weird moans and weird sounds I can't explain, and I will listen to them. A lot of them I would capture on my audio, and I would go through them and listen again and again and again. And the closest, like, if I think, okay, that might be this animal. So I'll go through. YouTube's a good source. I tell people this all the time. You want to look up various animal vocalizations, put it into search, thing, and look for, like, owls, for example. Now, I've been out in the woods with other people, and not to sound like a know-it-all, but when I get other people out there and they hear these sounds, it's like they get excited thinking they're hearing a Sasquatch or something. No, relax. It's just an owl. Barred owls are very common in this area, and I've heard probably every sound they can make. And some of them are very freakish. They make these god awful screams that are like, whoa, what the heck was that? It will literally make your hair on the back of your neck stand up. Especially when it catches you off guard and you're not expecting it. But yeah, barred owls make so many notorious crazy sounds. But yeah, again, I know I'm rambling right now, but
No, you're good. You're kind of laying the groundwork for kind of getting into your basis for your research.
Yeah, so like I'm going out this weekend. My thing is when I go out to camp too, here's another thing. I go out there in a relaxed state, yes, I hike around and I explore and I look for things, but also when I camp, a lot of times I will chill at the camp area. Because these locations that I go into, you're already deep in the woods to begin with. So, you know, hang out there at your campsite and listen. A lot of times at nighttime when I do group campouts, some people talking about, hey, can we go on a night hike? I say, yeah, that's all fine and dandy, but the best thing to do is sit still and just relax, listen, go about your normal self. Like there's been several times where I'm sitting there, I'm listening to everybody chit chat around the fire at night, but I'm also zoned in around me, like, okay. And then, of course, when I do start hearing everything, like, is no one else hearing this? So I have to basically shut up, everyone. I hate to be the butthole of the group, but I was like, everybody, shut up. Listen. I said, there's stuff going on here. And some of this you think it would be obvious. Some of it is loud enough to where it should be picked up by even people talking, but surprisingly, it's not.
People just tune it out because they're too into their conversation.
Exactly. I mean, like I said, I love picking up everything. I'm kind of glad I do because you just never know. Till some sounds catch you off guard, and you're not really picking up on what was that. Maybe it was just an owl, maybe it was just a coyote, or whatever. But yeah, like I tell people, it's very important just to relax your mind, but yet focus and keep an open mind and try to learn to use your senses a little bit more, because there's a lot more happening around you out in nature than you realize. And you'd be surprised just being out there, you'll learn a lot just from being there. Nature is a learning tool. Well, I should say it's a lot to learn out there in nature. If you observe enough, you will learn things, if you pay attention. So, but that's the way I look at it. And, like I said, yeah, that's kind of basically me, how I am. With my research, I hike, I explore, and I just take my time doing it. There's no sense in rushing through the woods. Like, you got to hurry up and try to find something. It's not a game. It's not a competition. A lot of these researchers out there make this whole thing a competition. And I know this is kind of switching gears, but I kind of want to throw this out there. I see it more and more today. Some people might have been on a show or featured on TV somewhere along the lines because of their Bigfoot story. Or some young person gets pumped up and think they're getting Hollywood famous because they got a book with their name in it, or they wrote a book, or there's a movie that was a documentary that got made about them. Now they're all basically they got Hollywood on the mind, and thinking they're going to get rich and famous, and hey, maybe they will, but I see this with grown adults all the time. People get a swelled head because they get some recognition. I'll be the first to tell you that yes, it's exciting and it's encouraging that people recognize you, and you get asked to go speak at events. I have been featured in a few documentaries myself. It's exciting. It's cool to be a part of something like that, or be the main person. Like one of them, I'm the main person, or one of them, but I'm featured in the other ones. And so yes, it's, again, I'll repeat it. It's encouraging. It does kind of hype you up just a little bit, but at the same time, you have to realize, oh, these are just documentaries. These ain't actually films and movies, like Hollywood. But there's so many people because, I don't know, because they might know somebody like, oh, I know that guy. I'm good friends with so-and-so that's on that TV show, and the hype really gets to them. I've seen so many, even I got some friends that get swelled heads. And it's like, sometimes I want to say stuff to them, but you're wondering how will they take that, and perhaps maybe it will humble them. I don't know. But, Yeah, again, I got friends that have been featured on shows, and all of a sudden they think they're Mister Everything in the Bigfoot world. So yeah, me, what I try to do, I try to spread the word about my research. My biggest thing, and I've repeated it elsewhere before, is I believe in spreading awareness of who I am and what I do. Um, I do share very openly my views on the topic. I'm a very objective person. And with that being said, I have to be careful because people think, oh, I'm just somebody that's trying to be a negative Nelly. But I am a knower, so I want to make that known. I am a knower of Bigfoot's existence, but I'm also very objective. I'm a critical thinker. I'm not perfect. I don't have all the answers, but I will give you the most logical answer. Or if there's something I observed, you know, I'll get into that too. If I have to. But I try to stay humble. It's very important to stay humble because Bigfoot, the existence of Bigfoot to a lot of people, it does not exist. It's just a folklore story. Um, so we can't get too excited. I got people bragging to me about this and that, and I listen to it, or whatever, and I just go let it go in one ear and off the other. I say, oh, good for you. That's nice. you know. So it's whatever. There's other things I can get into, but I'll leave them alone because they're not really for public discussion. But which kind of like what I'm kind of talking about will lead me to a few other things. But yeah, they're more personal, I guess. But I'll leave them alone for now. So
no, see, I agree with you that it's about the furthering of the research and the furthering of the knowledge about the subject rather than anybody trying to get famous off of it. Like anybody in this community, I mean, you might be famous within the community maybe, but you're never going to be a millionaire. You're never going to make a bunch of money off this stuff. Like you got to do it for like the whole of the community. That's what it's all about. And people just get blinded by, like a studio trying to throw money or something like that, particularly with like the big TV shows. And it kind of gets to a point where, particularly with like the ghost stuff too, that it's not really doing any good for the true honest research anymore because they're just making it into almost like a joke for people that are watching it from the outside. But yeah, that's kind of how I've always been.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like, when I'm on the show, I'm not trying to make somebody's experience into something way bigger than it was. Like I want to hear the information that they have, exactly what they experienced, and not try to make it again seem like it's way more than what it actually was, because that's honestly not doing any good for the research. But hold that thought. We'll be back in a flash. But if you don't like hearing the ads, then I have a solution for you. You can get ad-free and early access to this show and Bizarre Encounters with Shayn Orin on the Open Minds Media Patreon for just $1 a month. That's less than a bag of chips, and it's a great way to support the show and all the hard work behind it. And if you're interested in merch store discounts, live access to episodes, or premium video versions of episodes, then there are a few other tiers with additional benefits with 7-day free trials available. And we are back, so let's hop right in. Even for the sake of actually talking about experiences, you had mentioned that you are a Sasquatch knower, and I assume that most people who say that have had some type of a face-to-face experience or some kind of very close experience. So I'd love to hear why you're a knower and the experience that may have led to that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I have had an encounter, actually a couple encounters. One was a visual, the other one was not. I've had a lot of other little experiences here and there along the way. For the record, I will say that I became a knower long before I've ever had any experiences. It just, some of the things I started finding, tracks, for example, because, I believe what I was finding were authentic. They were out in the woods, deep in the woods up in Pennsylvania, was the first set of tracks I've ever come across. And I was seeing things that were starting to stand out. Since I started paying attention more, I was finding things that, okay, people pointing at the broken tree limbs and the structures or formations and this and that. I was noticing weird things like that too. But I was convinced that the tracks I was seeing were real. And with nobody knowing what I was doing, okay, I could rule out, well, no one's hoaxing me because they don't know what I'm out here doing. I'm out here hiking and exploring, and exploring in a location that I'm very unfamiliar with to begin with. So, so that kind of made me a knower. I mean, I was like, I like there is something here making these tracks. There's something physical out here walking around. So over the years, I started seeing things. I started noticing things, odd things. Like I said, I mentioned the structures and formations. Some of these things, some of the things we find, we can say, well, okay, something or someone made these, because some of these structures and formations that we do come across, you would have to assume that it takes, somebody with hands that could grip with, having opposable thumbs. Now, that being said, hey, there's many species that have opposable thumbs, small ones and big ones. The largest species on Earth that have opposable thumbs is us humans and, non-human primates such as chimpanzees and gorillas and so forth. Well, that's another subject as far as to get into Bigfoot, what Bigfoot might be. But so, I started looking at these things. Okay. I could look at that and say, well, I'm not going to say Bigfoot made them because I didn't witness it. Two, I can just say, well, something or someone made that, but what is the purpose? That's another thing. So I couldn't really relate to that too much on being Bigfoot evidence, even though it's still something to document and make note of. But as far as the tracks and everything, that was enough to convince me. The other thing too, I have to ask myself, what animal or what species on Earth would have a kill zone? With that being said, what's a kill zone? For example, I came across as what I would describe as a deer graveyard. Out in the middle of the woods in this one particular area up in Pennsylvania, I came across all these scattered deer remains and bones that were, most of them have been there for a while. Some of them already had the moss and other growth grown over them, but they were still noticeable, I can't say none of them were entirely fresh or too fresh, but a lot of them had been there for a while. Seeing this, it was interesting because, it's like, what in the world? It's not like there was a side of the road and it was a dump off spot for hunters because, I see that all the time everywhere. A lot of hunters, if they'll get out their deer and take what they want, or poachers will just take what they want and leave the remains to hurry up and get out of the area. Or, like I said, a lot of hunters will just dispose of the carcass and off the side of the roads. This wasn't like that. This wasn't off the side of any road. This was in the middle of the woods. I don't know what was killing these deer and just leaving the remains right there with the bones scattered all over. I mean, there was a big cluster of dead deer bones. That was an observation where, again, I can't think of any other known species of animal or wildlife that would be doing that. Because that's the only time I can recall ever finding a bunch of dead, deer in one spot. That was many, many years ago. But now, as far as having an encounter, my first encounter would happen in 2014. I wasn't alone. This actually was during one of my group campouts, and it was in the month of May. The month of May of 2014. I just shared this story yesterday because I was on another podcast yesterday. So, I've shared it so many times. So I'll try to stay on point because sometimes I take shortcuts, which I'll try not to.
You're totally fine if you do. The shortcuts always lead to some interesting stuff anyway. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, this was during one of the group campouts that I hosted, and like I said, there was a total of 6 of us. Although there was a few others that were at camp, but they left a day or two early or so. But after doing some hiking during the day, we had a good hike. We found a few interesting things, possible tracks, and that was on the ridge way up behind where we were set up camp. Yeah, because we probably hiked for probably a good, I don't know, it's what seemed like many hours, but it was probably 2 or 3 hours. Um, but yeah, after we came back to camp, we kind of refreshed, refresh ourselves, got ourselves some bite to eat, and I can't remember who it was. Somebody was like, "Hey, we got to go do a night hike." I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" Um, so we planned on it. That evening, we packed up, geared up, and on foot we hiked from where our campsite was, and we headed down on foot. We decided to go down to the lake, and it was just under a mile. And by the time we got to the lake, which was interesting because usually there's people down there fishing, and we got down there was not one soul down there. So I was like, "Oh, this is good. We have the whole lake to ourselves." So, and keep in mind, to give you a little picture of the lake. The lake is, of course, surrounded by two mountains. Well, the mountain on one side and more of a higher ridge on the other side. And so, you're basically looking at the lake. The lake is basically sitting like in a bowl. So, um, it's like we decided, all right, it's the sun was just starting to go down at that point. It was probably, I don't know, I forget. It was sometime in the evening because like I said, we left out in the evening while there was still daylight. And by the time we made it down there, the sun was already starting to go down. But we paired up in twos. We spread out around the lake, and we had radio communication. Me and my buddy Tracy, we both had parabolic mics, so we were listening both from where he was set up at, and from me and the other guy. Tracy had his son. His son was 14 at the time, and so yeah, we were all spread out around the lake, and we were listening. We heard a few things up behind us. Sounded like some footfall. On occasion you might hear a little snap of a limb or something. I'm thinking, okay, it's probably just the deer. It is the evening. The deer are moving in. Who knows? I wasn't even thinking Bigfoot, but we were there to do, Bigfoot research and find, trying to hopes of finding Bigfoot evidence. But I think we dealt with and encountered more wildlife than anything. But so one thing I like to share with everybody, one of the couples that was with us, Kimmy and Darren, they were down from Vermont, and they joined us, and they were an older couple. Now, Kimmy, she's a small thing. I tell this story every time because, I'm proud of Kimmy. She's like got the coolest set of lungs on her. And if you ever listen to or watch Finding Bigfoot and hear Bobo sound off and do his calls, well, Kimmy is basically like a small miniature female version of Bobo when it comes to vocalizations. So I radioed down to Kimmy. I was like, "Kimmy," because at that point it was quiet. We weren't getting no activity. I was like, let's try something. And Kimmy, go ahead and give off your vocalizations. And everybody, when Kimmy's done, let's shut up and listen. Sure enough, now she gave off her vocalization, and we're listening. Probably about 10 seconds or so later, a good 10 seconds, we get some kind of return vocalization, like a moan, or not a moan, but more of some kind of short howl type sound. And it sounded like it came from the opposite ridge. And so, okay, that kind of gives a little excitement. It turned what was being dull and boring up to like, all right, that's cool. We got some kind of vocalizations. But we didn't hear nothing more after that. It died down. And keep in mind, at this point, it's dark. It's getting late. We've been down there for some time now. And it was probably, it was right around midnight. It was about midnight. And we all decided, okay, we've been down there long enough. We weren't getting nothing else. And it was time to head back to camp. So we all regroup at the front of the lake where Kimmy and Darren were set up at. Because it was like on the lake, there's a little peninsula that had a bench here. The bench is no more. Somebody destroyed that thing or burned it up or something. But So yeah, we regrouped. We met up with everybody, and our mission and our goal was to head back to camp. And we're walking along single file line, and we're not trying to keep quiet because we're not trying to sneak up on them. We're just trying to get back to camp. And keep in mind, we're walking along. We got ahead, the headlamps on, and we're talking here and there. And I'm looking up ahead, and all of a sudden, I see this set of eyeballs. Well, it was a deer. And this deer walking right towards us. And I was like, the heck? Why? I was like, I know it hears us. I know it smells us. And I just found it odd. It's one thing I tell people. It was the strangest thing. Why is this deer walking right towards us? And sure enough, it did turn off like nonchalantly, like it was like just chilling. But yeah, it was like probably about 10 feet in front of us where it turned off and went into the woods and, disappeared further into the darkness. I was like, oh, I don't know. It was weird. I mean, I walked up on deer before and I spooked deer before, but never had a deer just walk straight towards me, especially out there. But right where it turned off at, we're walking along, and all of a sudden something else catches my attention on the opposite side of the forest road. And I'm seeing what looks or appears to be some type of reflection, like a yellowish reflection. The first initial thought was, like I'm kind of squinting. I'm trying to get focused on whatever it was, and I'm thinking it's one of these little yellow metal signs that you can find randomly in the national forest. And usually all they say is no vehicle beyond this point. Well, I'm looking at it, and all of a sudden it became It became more in focus, and I seen it blink, and I think my jaw almost about dropped on the ground. Like, what the heck? My buddy Tracy was the next one behind me, and I was like, Tracy, whoa, what the heck is that? Of course, my reaction or what I actually said to him, I said, is that a freaking mountain lion? The reason I thought that, one, I know they're in the area. Two, it was sitting kind of low. And I didn't know what to think of it. I mean, I'm thinking that's out of the why the mountain lion was the first thing that popped in my head because nothing else made sense to me. And I will tell you, the only other animal that will have yellow eye shine at night that is, if you ever see a raccoon at night shine a light right out of a raccoon, their eyeballs are bright, yellow. They're solid yellow. Well, this wasn't no raccoon. All I know, it was kind of low, and after we're looking at it, he's like right over my shoulder, looking over at it, and all of a sudden we see it zip off. Like, what the heck? It took off kind of quick. So Trace was like, guys, let's get up here. We got some eye shine up here. So we all grouped together. We get into that spot where we seen that eye shine. And all of a sudden, we're looking down in the woods. Oh, for the record, too, I need to clarify this, that from where we were standing, it did slope down a little bit right there. It sloped down several feet and then leveled back out. Over to the right of where we were standing was a tree by where whatever this was next to that tree. And we're looking down into this area. Like I said, there's a lot of bushes and trees in here. All of a sudden, we see that set of eye shine again, but this time it's not standing still. It's swaying side to side. And I will make mention that for whatever reason, we did not see any physical features, no details, and nothing. The eye shine was the only thing that was standing out at this point. The only thing maybe I could think of it is they were just outside of the beam of light to really notice or recognize. But the eye shine was very clear. Large yellow looking eyes. And even though it sloped down several feet and the ground was lower, I estimated that was probably whatever it was probably around 4 feet tall. And it stayed swaying side to side pretty swiftly. Well, we're looking at this and just trying to make heads or tails or whatever, just trying to scratch my head. And at the same time, inside my head, I'm running through every known species of animal that I know that exists in these woods. And nothing's making sense. Nothing's adding up. So while we're watching this, all of a sudden, about 5, maybe 6 feet to the right of this one, a second set of eye shine appears. Same color eyes, very large, but they stood about 2 feet taller than the small one. It wasn't moving like the small one was. It would blink its eyes on occasion because, keep in mind, a couple of us had some bright lights, That's why it didn't make sense to me. Why aren't we seeing anything? But you would see the eyes blink. Small ones still swaying side to side. So now we got two subjects. We got one that's estimated to be 4 feet tall. Then we got a 6 foot one now. And we're staring at this and checking it out. And I don't know. It's interesting. And the thought of Sasquatch didn't even flood through my mind. It didn't even, enter my mind at that point. Well, I'm looking around. I'm trying to observe the area the best I can because it was very dark and it was after midnight. And I don't know. It's just, when the air settles in the evening and it kind of, I don't want to say it was foggy, but it was just that dark. It was so dark. It was like an eerie dark, and I'm trying to observe and look through the area the best I can. And several feet away from the two of them, I'm looking around there. I'm scanning my eyes. There's some thick bushes over here. And all of a sudden, I notice a third set of eye shine. But this third set of eye shine looked like it was on the ground, which was weird. Maybe I don't know. It was dark. Maybe it wasn't exactly on the ground, but that's what it looked like to me. So I pointed it out. I don't know who else acknowledged it. I think Tracy said something, but I'm paying attention to this. My eyes are glued on this third set of eye shine. And all of a sudden, because I'm seeing it starting to raise up, and it's raising up, and you can see it getting taller and taller and taller, like as if it was like either laying down, crouched down, or I don't know what it was doing. But now it's getting taller and taller and taller. Two sets of eyes, and yes, again, they were the same colors as the other two. So that's another thing I thought was very intriguing. Is this a family of something? It's a family of something that we don't know what it is,
Hold that thought. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. And we are back to the show. So let's hop right in.
Now, as that tall one stopped over top of the bushes, it was towering over top of the 6 foot one by another 2 feet. Now, we're all observing this at this point. Tracy's the one, again, Tracy speaks up. Tracy's like, guys, we got squatches. Now, at that point, I wanted to believe that. I really did. I wanted to believe that, but I needed something. I needed something to confirm. If these are squatches, prove it to me. Show me something. I needed to see something. And sure enough, it did get a little interesting because that tall one appeared to turn to its left and take a step or two and then look back. Now, when it made that maneuver, and I'm believing it's from the lights caught it at the right angle in the right position. Because what I saw next blew me away. I was like, I was kind of like at a pause for a second before I said anything to anybody. But what I clearly saw was very wide, broad shoulders and a big round head on top. I didn't see no color of the hair. I didn't see no facial features, but I seen a clear, wide silhouette, big round head and big wide shoulders. And at that point, I was convinced that we were seeing squatches. They weren't bears. Bears don't have shoulders like that. I don't know what else to think, but I'm convinced what we saw was a small group of squatches. Could have been a family unit. I like to believe it possibly was a young one, a female, and the big boy being the male. Which I don't know. It was interesting. But after a moment, what seemed like I tell people this too, sometimes that whole moment of seeing all three of them, it seemed like it was going on for, I don't know, a long, long time, but it was probably maybe a total of between 5 and 10 minutes. I don't remember the times. I didn't pay attention to the time. But after a moment, they all appeared to what looked like they turned off and either turned their backs and walked away because all three eye shines disappeared. And I guess they went further into the darkness and went about their business. And so did we. We stepped back and continued walking on the road and talking about it. And And while we're walking, now I heard it. I didn't make no big deal. Kimmy was the only one that was acting like a kind of nervous. She's like, "Oh my God, they're following us." I said, "No, they're just walking through the woods." Because you would hear like an occasional limb snap or something off to our left, which that's where they were as we're walking away. And so we get back to camp, and again, we're still talking about it. We're still trying to, like, I mean, I'm feeling convinced what we saw with squatches, but just to be logical, and we're still trying to think of every other possibility, which we couldn't think of anything. But the one thing we ended up kicking ourselves in the butt for was me and Tracy Arnold. We were the only ones that had night vision binoculars in our backpack. And yeah, not once did we ever thought about pulling them out. And when I shared this yesterday, one of the hosts on the podcast, he made something. It was a good point. I didn't think about this, but perhaps if we did think about it and decided to get into our backpacks, because they were on our backs, if we spun them around, maybe could we have started them off where they would have gone off sooner? I don't know. That I didn't think about that, but maybe it was a good thing that we didn't bother. But I would have loved to see some more details. I would have loved to have more to share on the description of them. But we did end up going back the very next day after we got up and had breakfast, got coffee, and we decided to go back down there. This time we drove back down there. But we got into that very same spot, and I think one or two, yeah, who was it? I forget. Somebody stayed on the roadway. We walked down into there. The one gentleman that was with us, Cliff Stanley. I'm 6 foot tall. He's probably like 6'2". He's just a little taller than I am. But me and him got into the position where we were seeing them, and like even with us, or with our hands raised above our head, on the tallest one, that's about where the eye shine was. So I think our estimations, I was estimating their height levels that night, but for what we came up with, we were pretty close, and I think we're close to being accurate. So we would say a 4 foot, 6 foot, and an 8 foot subject. And I was calling them subjects for the longest time, but again, I like to believe that they were a family unit of squatches that were working that area. And I'll also go on to add this too, which sometimes I forget this, but a year later, in that same section of woods, just around the corner, I was during the hunting season. It was November of 2015, and there was a small little primitive camp spot just around the corner. I was set up camp there, and there was nobody else in the whole area right there. I had that whole general area to myself. The next camp spots were up a little ways, up around where we were camped at back in 2014. So that area was nice. I had that to myself, and I'm sitting there around the campfire, my shotgun leaning up against my vehicle, and the only thing I was hearing was the sound of the fire, snap, crackle, and pop. But I'm sitting there wide awake. I wasn't feeling tired. I was actually kind of bored. So I was like, what the heck? I grabbed my spotlight, and keep in mind, I did not turn it on, and I do this on some rare occasions. I grabbed my spotlight. I walked out to the middle of the road, and I stood there in total darkness. And I just stand there and listen. And I look around, even though it's dark as crap, you can't see nothing. But I do this sometimes. And when I've done other group campouts, I've brought other people out. Hey, let's walk up to the road. Don't turn the lights on. Just stand out here. And I don't know what got me doing that. I guess it's part of my experimental observations of the night life out there in the woods. I don't know. But
hey, if it works, it works.
Sure enough, I'm out there. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, sometimes like when I've done it with other people, like we're listening, sometimes the roadway, the forest road is kind of acts as a tunnel of, if anything is sounding off, sometimes you will pick things up a little bit better than what you might when you're surrounded by the trees right there in your campsite. Well, this particular moment, I got out there in the middle of the forest road, and I stood there for a moment, And then all of a sudden, I'm in the middle of the road. Tree line over there is probably about 20 feet from me. So I decided, let's turn the spotlight on, just randomly shining at the tree line. But I start over to my left, and I'm probably around the 10 o'clock position as I'm facing that tree line. I start shining. As soon as I turn it, I pull the trigger on the spotlight and start shining it over there, I spooked up a deer. There was a deer just inside the tree line. You can hear it run off real quick. I said, oh, cool. I spooked up a deer. And I continued to pan my spotlight from my left going to my right. And as I go past the 1 o'clock position and hit just probably right around what 2 o'clock is, all of a sudden, what I heard next threw my heart up in my throat. And I'm like kind of stunned for a second, like, what the hell is that? You know, I'm thinking to myself, because what I heard next was very huge. It was heavy, large, bipedal. And I'll clarify bipedal because I heard it walking. Every step it took had a crunch and a bump to it as it stepped. It was like a and that kind of rattled my nerves. You know, I mean, I didn't know what to think. I was like, that ain't a bear. Bears, I'm going to tell you, I've been close to bears. I know what bears sound like, you know, but because of padding on their feet, they are very soft. A bear could walk up on you if you're not paying attention, you know, because they are very stealthy and quiet from the pads on their feet. This was not a bear. This was humanoid. This was bipedal. Every step it was taken, it was, it had me so nervous. Like I said, my heart was literally up in my throat. And when I realize what I'm hearing, like I'm kind of freaking out. I start walking backwards, and with the opposite hand, I reach down to my belt loop and start pushing not the panic button, but make sure my vehicle was unlocked, just in case I had to jump in there and take off, you know. But as I made it all the way back into my campsite, all of a sudden I come, like my whole system, like, whew, like it's like that fear went away. I felt calm, you know. I didn't feel frightened like I was, you know, because I come to the realization, I paid attention to what I was hearing. I said, whatever that was had every opportunity. If it meant any harm to me, it could have came out and sacked me like a football player, you know, but it was going away from me. So that's what was in my mind. It's like I startled it or I interfered. And I'm going to clarify and explain on interfering, why I say interfere. Because the one thing I share to a lot of people regarding the 2014 encounter and this situation in 2015, as I mentioned, there was deer present prior to both of these situations. Now, a lot of people believe that deer is a food source for, you know, Sasquatch, Bigfoot. You know, I mean, why not? I mean, we don't know this, but it sounds very plausible, very likely, because deer are also a food source for coyotes and wolves and whatever else, you know. So I got to thinking, and to this day, I tell people, I ask myself to this day, did I interfere? Did I interrupt a possible hunt? Were these squatches getting ready to hunt these deer? Because like in 2014, that deer was what we saw right in front of us before it turned off. And then just up across the road was where everything started. So that was, again, 2014 and 2015, right here in Virginia in the George Washington National Forest. I won't mention location-wise. Many people know this location and where it happened and everything, but like my group campouts, I don't get into giving off the public location, the location publicly, because we don't want people interfering or tampering. You know, that's the one thing I do now, because I used to welcome anybody into these group campouts, you know, for a donation fee of $100. But I stopped doing that. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do an invite only thing. So, you know, when the time comes for a group camp out, I'll announce publicly, hey, me and the group, we're going out camping. We're doing our group camp out. We'll be out there for a week doing an investigation, this and that. yeah, I no longer give out the location. Well, I never did give out the location because, again, I don't want hoaxers tampering and messing with stuff, you know? And if we witness something, if we experience something or hear something, we want to be able to, we want it to be natural. We want it to be, organic. We don't want it to be, you know, I don't know, right the word to think of right now, but yeah, we don't want people playing with us, So.
Don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be right back with that deep conversation you crave. But just a quick reminder, if you'd like to snag some gear for this show, Bizarre Encounters, or your favorite creature or topic, hop on over to the Open Minds Media merch store for a wide range of designs with new drops regularly. Welcome back to the show. Now let's dive right in.
But yeah, 2014 and 15, that was the two that I share. Like I said, there's other little things here and there. I've had, rocks thrown at me before in other locations, not in this general area, but in another location. So, and also in this location with the account, I have come across a series of tracks over the years. I have a small collection of tracks. Now, there's a few of my tracks I end up giving away at a few events ago, like a few conferences of mine ago. I wanted the people to have souvenirs, from Virginia, their own home state. Like, these are Bigfoot tracks that I found, so I ended up raffling them off. We used it in one of our blind raffles, but when people were tickled to death, and they were so happy to get a cast, because it's like, it's whatever. I mean, but I was glad for them to have them, so.
Being a Sasquatcher, one of the coolest things you can have is a cast. I got one up in this cabinet back here, and I got an Telecast too, and those are two of my most prized Sasquatch possessions.
Oh, nice. Are they ones you found, or are they replicas? Or
one of them is a replica. Actually, both of those ones are replicas, and then I do have other ones that are actually ones that I have, but the one's the Grace Harbor, and then the one's the Telecast that they were doing for a while, where it was that thing where they were like putting their hand in the jar and it's the fingerprints. So like those are two that I had to just have on display for in the cabinet, because the Grace Harbor one is like almost like a perfect footprint, and it was found by a police officer. And then the Telecast, it's like, who has a cast of a Sasquatch hand? Like, that's awesome.
Yeah, if I ever had the room to, or I don't know, if I was a little bit more organized in my situation here, I would work on collecting. I would love to have a lot of those replicas. I know other people that have a good series of the replica tracks. And but some people buy them, will buy extras of them and sell them. Like, I don't know, but I've been offered money for mine. Some of mine before, which I said, no, these are mine. I mean, I said, these are what I find, if I knew how to replicate them, maybe I would sell replicated copies, but, I just don't, I never tried to. I mean, I'm sure I could figure that out, but I don't know.
I think they just make silicone molds, to be honest with you. I think it's like, those silicone molds where you just like, you have like the bin, and then you put the rubber inside of it, and then you let it sit in there, and then you kind of pull it back off, and then you peel off the extra pieces off your mold, and then you can just fill it in with plaster from there. I'm pretty sure that's how a lot of people do it.
Now, if I recall, somebody did mention, or I got the idea from somebody, but take one of your casts and find some soft, fine sand, and perhaps, the sand would be a perfect mold. Just have to. I don't know. Maybe I'll try that someday. I don't. Oh, so that's an idea. I mean, maybe I'll do that. I'll take one of my best looking tracks, because some of my tracks I have, because of the soil they're found on, they're not the prettiest looking casts. So although toes, you can clearly make out the shape of the toes and stuff like that, but the details of the track itself is from the terrain and the soil that I've come across. And I've cleaned mine off pretty well. I've even cleaned them off and actually painted them white, even though the plaster of Paris that I use, it's white, but, you pick up a lot of your soil, and sometimes you end up picking up some of the debris, although I've gotten pretty good about dealing with that there because I learned something from Dr. Jeff Meldrum that he suggests or points out in one of his little field guide pamphlets is using hairspray prior to making that cast, which I was getting into practice of that. You know, you spray the track, you know, spray it real good with hairspray, let it sit for maybe, you know, a few minutes or so. And what that does is it seals everything together. You know, it's like a super stiff hairspray. I used to use hairspray when I was younger. Now I use Jello, but yeah, a super stiff hairspray will, you know, like if you ever felt like somebody with stiff hair, you know, that's what it'll do to the ground and all the debris, any kind of like leaf litter that might still be there or little sticks. It basically glues it to the ground and it preserves whatever details are there. So when you do go to pour the cast, it will eliminate picking up a lot of your debris. And yeah, it'll, you know, pick up, it'll prevent it from picking up into the cast material itself. But
so make sure you check for hair first, though, before you spray it, because I've heard of some stories people have gotten lucky and they've done like a cast and they end up finding some hair samples inside of the cast itself because it gets stuck within the plaster. But I say if you're going to use the hairspray, just double check and make sure there isn't any trace evidence before.
Oh, right. Now, the other thing, it's funny you mentioned that because, I mean, you could basically go anywhere in the woods. Like, for example, one of the things I learned to do or I started doing when I go out actually hunting, I'll take my hunting coat off, take it off, and I'll rub it through the leaves and stuff all on the ground. And one of the things, too, is when you pick it up, look at it. You'll find hairs because you'll actually end up getting deer hairs on you because, you know, sometimes some of these places, the deer bed down or they shed, you know, so yeah, some of it, yeah, you got to be careful because some of it might just be deer hair. But yeah, but now that's a good point. It could be, you know, if it's a Squatch track, we don't know how hairy their feet are. Maybe they're shedding when they walk. I don't know, but that is a good idea. What's the other thing? Oh, another thing too. Of course, you would have to have a source to send to. I know of one gentleman who is. I call him a professor, but he's a highly educated teacher at a university who I won't get into too many details because I don't know if he wants his information put out there, but he was involved for a long time and seems like he's gotten quiet on it. I don't know. He was involved with several other primatologists and he used to be connected with the late John Bindernagel, wildlife biologist, who was very well involved with Bigfoot research. Which this gentleman received all the copies of the Bigfoot cast that John had before he passed away. And this, again, I'll call him professor. This professor, he's actually been to Virginia here and been out in the woods with me and explored. And but one of the things he taught me, because he deals a lot with his chemistry lab at the university, and one of the things we talked about is that Daniel, you know, he's like, we need to have protocol. You know, a lot of people ain't going to understand this, but you know, it's basic. It's very easy to understand when he explained it to me. Basically, you know, as far as in hopes of capturing DNA from a track, eDNA to be more exact, for those who have ever heard of eDNA, you know, DNA that can be collected from the earth and organic material. No, you know, other than being DNA from a blood or, you know, saliva or whatever. But eDNA is a whole different situation. So he started to explain to me, he said, when you find tracks, take soil samples from the track itself, put it in a bag. Also take another soil sample outside of the track. What they do, they compare the two. I'm not going to even get into that, but he says they need it for comparison purposes. But he said, you know, use the eDNA because almost anything, even if we step out barefoot in the woods, I mean, we're constantly shedding skin. We're constantly shedding DNA everywhere we go. If it ain't skin, it is hair. So eDNA is very important. will it prove Bigfoot? I don't know. I don't know if DNA will, but it'll give us more of an insight and it'll tell a story once it's revealed. What actually is it coming from? So, I don't know what it will show up as Bigfoot. Everybody has their own speculation on what Bigfoot is. I do too, but um, I forgot where I was going with that, but I guess that's something I wanted to throw out there. So
talking about a good way to be able to collect footprints. So, I mean, for anybody that is just getting into Squatch researching and anything like that, I mean, definitely some good information to have, because it's always better to take the cast and have it not be anything than wish that you took the cast and, end up with something that could have been something great. So it's better to know at least. And even hearing some advanced tips. I'd never heard of the hairspray trick before, so I'm going to have to try that one myself. Like I said, I'm going to have to make sure I check the ground, make sure I do the soil thing, but, I definitely think that that'll be a smart idea as far as trying to keep the tracks clean at least.
Oh, for sure. Like I said, I need to get me some more hairspray because, like I said, it's been a while since I've actually found a track, but I need to start keeping hairspray with me and be prepared for that. Again, get the strongest hold hairspray you can get, because the stronger you get, the better. To you probably don't have to put as much hairspray into the track. So, and as far as people making casts, if you're gonna make a cast too, a lot of people that's another big question. Making casts and mixing the plaster together, it's messy if you're not careful. But a lot of people ask me, well, how should I make the consistency of plaster for the track? You make pancake batter, think of pancake batter. You don't want it really thick to where it's barely pouring out, but you don't want it pouring out like milk either. So you got to you want it to pour out. Keep thinking of a nice, easy, smooth pour, And the other thing to keep in mind is, depending on the time of year, if you're finding tracks, if it's cold, it's going to take longer to set up. The cure, I mean, it might harden faster in the cold, but you really want to be careful. You want to let it sit longer. Hot, warmer temperatures, it might take you about 30 minutes to 45 minutes. Even then, you still want to be careful because, your temperature's warm and the ground is also warm too. So it's basically baking and curing that a lot better than it is in the cold. So if that makes any sense. That's based off of my experience, as far as pouring plaster into a track. So, but practice. If you got kids, or even if you're yourself, go step in find an exposed area where it's soft, soft soil. I've done it for myself. It is, of course, your track is going to look a lot better than what you're making out there in the woods. But it's a fun thing to do, especially, Shayn, you said you got kids, right? Young kids.
Actually, I think CryptidCon last year was doing a little thing for kids where they was teaching them how to do Bigfoot tracks. I think they're doing that at one of the Ohio conventions too. So I think my kids didn't get a chance to do it there, but I know that there are a handful of events that are actually like doing like little seminars for kids on like how to do these casts and everything too, and making it fun where it's like their foot and stuff like that. But we need to bring it back for adults too. We need to have adult casting too, because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that want to learn how to cast better, if not properly in the first place. And when it's a kid seminar, you feel kind of weird sometimes if you don't have a kid doing it, but if you have a kid, it's a good excuse.
Exactly. Actually, I need to do that with my grandson. Like, he's 4 years old, but for a little guy, he's got big wide feet. I guess I don't know where he gets it from. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's me. I don't know. But so I don't know. I got wide feet too, but so.
So you can always practice going by riverbanks and stuff like that, because I don't know if you're a fisherman, but every time I go fishing, I end up finding raccoon tracks and all these like really, really perfect deep tracks along like the edges of the river. So if you're ever just out there with your kids, bring some plaster and just go by a waterfront, and you might be lucky and catch at least some raccoon tracks or something you could take home.
Oh, absolutely. It's funny. I kind of thought of a random thing but we're talking about tracks, and you talk about raccoon tracks. The funny thing is, I've seen the so-called seasoned, and I say seasoned, Bigfoot researchers. with these plaster tracks of what they're calling to be this. This is not recent, but they're calling them to be juvenile hand tracks. Well, truth is, when you see these tracks, I wish I had pictures of them, but they were possum tracks. A possum, yeah. Anyone who's ever seen possum tracks, they do resemble a small child's hand. Just like like a large, a small version of our hand.
They got like elongated palm, that's why. So it kind of doesn't look like an animal hand; it looks more like a human hand.
Right. So, but that's what they did. Well, oh yeah, they had two different tracks. One was a possum track. And I swear to you, the other track again. Oh, you talk about raccoons. That's what, the rear foot of the raccoon. They are usually kind of long. That was, it was definitely a raccoon track, which was, I don't know. You hated this. I wanted to say something. I was like, but the gentleman, he's much older than I am, and I didn't want to rain on his parade. I was like, okay, let somebody else tell him. So, but it is what it is. So,
stay tuned, guys. This is our last break. But if you enjoyed the show and think I deserve it, please leave a review or rating for the show on iTunes, Spotify, or any other podcatcher you use. Your continued support is what makes this show possible, and your opinions go a long way to help the show grow and improve. So thank you. Now feel free to skip past these ads so we can get back to the show. Now back with that deep conversation you crave. Kind of wrapping up towards the end, and I'd love to have you come back on for a round two, but I always like doing the first introduction episode, talking about people's experiences and everything. So next time we can start getting into the Sasquatch theories and some of those little minor experiences and everything that you'd mentioned. But I always like ending the show with words of wisdom. So if there was any words of wisdom you might want to bestow on the listeners today, what might it be?
Well, I will tell you one of my... this is kind of a quote that I have stated on my website. I put it on Facebook. I shared it in some of my books. Learn and know what is known before seeking the unknown. That's one thing I throw out there. It's a simple, logical piece of information to understand. Because I will tell you, there's a lot of people out there that jump into this whole Bigfoot research phenomenon because they're excited. Bigfoot's on their brain. And everything they find out in nature, they're giving Bigfoot credit for it. They're contributing everything they find, regardless if it's a broken tree, twisted tree, or whatever they might find, but they're contributing everything they find to Bigfoot. Sadly, it doesn't work that way. There's a lot of other suspects and other wildlife and occurrences and phenomena that are responsible for a lot of what we find out in nature. And as I tell people, Bigfoot should always be your last consideration. Unless you're looking at Bigfoot doing what you're finding, doing what, exactly. You can't say Bigfoot's doing this. So that's why it's important to get familiar with nature, get familiar. A lot of weather creates things that we don't get to witness. So that's why I say learn and know what is known before seeking the unknown. There's a lot more behind that. And then again, if you want to learn more information about me, I know I probably came across as a rambling, off-the-wall lunatic today because I am very tired.
No. You have a lot of experiences and a lot to talk about. Yeah. So I didn't want to interrupt you. I didn't want to cut in because you're on a roll and you're telling your experiences, man. So, no, you weren't ranting at all, man. I like sitting back and listening to people tell their experiences.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's other things I get into, and I don't know what your listeners will think of this. But I'll be honest with you. Even when I do my own podcast, I feel like I'm more sharp and keen because one, they don't see me do it because I always keep my camera off when I record my podcast because it ends up going up to my radio show anyway. Because I'm usually drinking. I'm usually having a few beers, so it gets me relaxed. It gets my mind. I know it sounds crazy, but it actually sharpens my mind a lot more than you realize. So. But even though most of the time I'm actually sitting back and listening to my guests, but it usually it tends to have me more together. I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain.
Keeps you focused on one thing
because I have to work. Yeah, basically. So, but maybe next time I'll well, depends when we could do this again. If it's a Friday, I don't know if you do Friday nights.
Sometimes I do, yeah.
Okay. Well, if it ever works out, if you do a Friday night, because I don't have to get up for work the next day, um, yeah, we could. I might have a drink or two. You know, I don't try to. I don't like. I mean, I'm drinking water. Like I got water in a Sprite bottle right now, so I mean, it's not like I like hold my beer up with my drink up there. I don't show it off like that. I mean, that's why I usually turn my camera off. But but so but it's all good. But yeah, like I said, ladies and gentlemen, check out. I mean, I'm all over Facebook. I'm all over social media. I'm not hard to find. If you Google my name, like if you go to Google and do Daniel Benoit and add Bigfoot after that, I'm sure all kinds of posts and things will show up. If you go or do Daniel Benoit ECBRO, you'll find stuff about me. So, but yeah, again, I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. Oh, X now. It's weird calling it X, but I'm Instagram. So, and then my website, my website where my bio is ecbrofounder.com. So, and then my website for my annual event that I put on here in Virginia every June is vabigfootcon.com. My event this year in Wares Cave, Virginia is June 20th and the 21st. So uh, it's going to be a little interesting this year. I mean, although we have tons of vendors, we got our guest speakers, uh, activity for the kids, and we're going to have the medieval Renaissance people with us this year. It's the first time ever doing this with them. They'll be dressed up in their medieval attire and they'll be doing demos and battles outside where the other vendors will be set up at. We have, we have vendors inside and we have vendors outside. So it's, yeah, we're excited about that. We're looking forward to that. The furthest north I'll be this year to speak, I'll be in Marionville, Pennsylvania, which is kind of like the northwestern part of Pennsylvania. I'm speaking at the Forest County Bigfoot Festival. That event is June 6th, 7th, and 8th. Unfortunately, they scheduled me to speak on Sunday, the 8th, which I'm not crazy about that because, I mean, not, I don't know. It's just, I'd rather be on the main day, which is Saturday, but which I can't complain. I spoke there 2 years ago and they had me on Saturday. So I guess they have to make room for everybody else on that day. So hopefully enough people come out and listen to me ramble on Sunday. I prefer to have an audience. It's easy. I don't know why to have more people in front of me. I tend to have more of a focus.
You got people interacting with you a little bit more because you don't feel like you're talking to one direct person, you know?
Right. I mean, because I like to talk. I look over and talk. I like to scan the audience while I'm talking too. I mean, I got my presentation tools next to me, but yeah, I like to interact. I even joke and cut up with the crowd sometimes. But so yeah. But the other thing I'm doing too, as soon as I'm done speaking on Sunday, because I'll be there the whole weekend. But as soon as I'm done speaking on Sunday, they got me scheduled at Sunday, June 8th at noontime. There is a location about 40 minutes away from the festival area. It's all part of the Allegheny State Forest or National Forest, whatever. There's a lot of Bigfoot reports up that way. I will be camping for at least 2 nights up there. Yeah, I'll head out from camp and, I'll head out from the festival. And like I said, I'll camp. It'll be primitive, but I already mapped it out. I've already been looking into an area and so I'm looking forward to that as well. But yeah, that's pretty much what's going on with me at the moment. And then, I mean, there's other events coming up here and there. My group camp out's coming up in May. So we'll be doing some filming for that for a series on my YouTube channel, Bigfoot Zone. That's another thing. The filming that we're going to be putting together for a show. I don't know if I really want to call it a show. It's going to be a series that we're showing our investigations and our findings. It'll be unscripted, but we're going to be placing it on my YouTube channel. So if anybody wants to check that out, that's coming up. That'll start in May. But if you want to follow along on that, you can go to Bigfoot Zone ECBRO. That's my YouTube channel. And you can follow along in there. Plus, I have other podcasts and other field videos. Yeah, I think that's pretty much about all I have to say.
I'll make sure I include all those links down in the show description too, so everybody can find it quick and easy. And I appreciate you making the time to come on today, man. It was a great conversation. Loved hearing about your experiences, and I'm looking forward to next time, man.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, if I want to, well, actually, I'll talk to you about it after we go off air. So it's something I wanted to present to you as well. So yeah, thank you very much. I really enjoyed this. This has been awesome. And I would definitely look forward to doing this again with you, because there is a lot of information out there. A lot more I can share and talk about. One thing real quick, I usually don't, I do this on my podcast. I hope you don't mind. This is a book I want to throw out there real quick.
Absolutely.
This is a good friend of mine's latest book, his latest publication. The author is Kenny Irish, American Monster Hunters. This book here features several different researchers. The coolest one is in chapter 5. That's me. Not. So yeah. So yeah, feel free to check it out. There's some. I'm sure if you get this book, you'll recognize the people in this book. They're, I guess you could say, fairly well known. So yeah, American Monster Hunters by Kenny Irish. You can find it on Amazon. If there's I got this other book in front of me too. I forgot about this one. This gentleman is also one of my vendors. He's a pretty well established author himself. His name is Mike Dupler. And this book here is called Bigfoot Origins, Search for the Cryptid Homeland. So again, both of these books could be found on Amazon. So these guys have some great information. Like I said, the one book about the American Monster Hunters, that's more of, each chapter is the individual's bio, and then basically it was an interview. There was questions provided for us to respond to, and basically he put them all together in here, which is awesome. But this one here, I've only read very little of this. I have yet to really dig a lot deeper into it, but feel free to check it out. Again, they're both on Amazon. So yeah. But that's all I have to say about that.
If you enjoyed today's conversation and want to show some love, smash that follow icon and share today's episode with a friend. Grassroots support from listeners like you is exactly how the show grows. So thank you. And if anyone would like to get in touch with me for any other reason whatsoever, you guys can get a hold of me through email, which is inquiriesofourrealitypodcast@outlook.com, or through social media. Instagram and Facebook are the ones that I'm the most active on. Or you guys can also get a hold of me through the submission form, which of course is available on the link tree up at the top. And you guys can also get a hold of me through the hotline number. You guys can text or call, whatever happens to be easier for you guys. And that number is 313-364-1551. And if you guys have some free time, don't forget to check out the awesome friends of the show, IKNOWSQUATCH, Snarly Out Natural Products, Cryptoteeology, and Big Ape Threads, and our friends with affiliate links, Dimension Devices, Oregon-ite, and Sticker Mule, with additional discounts and credits available. More information on those is available down in the show notes. And every single thing that I mentioned is all available in the link tree, which is also available down in those show notes. And with that, hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. Hope today's show's connected some dots in your own reality, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Have a good night, everybody.
Reality isn't what it seems. Abductees taking aboard a craft with a tractor beam. Is life a simulation or an astral dream? Aliens travel through black holes in different galaxies. Life is a bizarre odyssey, with a mic talking about philosophy. Well, Bigfoot is stalking campers as a Wendigo walks through the woods of sharpened antlers, using a Ouija board to talk to the dead like a necromancer. There's so many questions and not enough answers. So if you're interested in mysteries and abnormalities, tune in and listen to